What's good, Wizards fans? It's your host, the real Ed Oliver and Brandon Scott. Today, we're going to talk about the news that the Wizards are expected to re-sign Kristaps Porzingis and Kyle Kuzma. Not anything new, but just reconfirmed by Eric Pincus. And also, we're going to talk about some new GM candidates or one today. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
So I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com. Promo code is Locked On. All right, so Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report came out with an article on May 5th, but it's starting to get around. Now, Basket News also came out with the report as well that Kristaps Porzingis is expected to be back in Washington. Also, same thing with Kyle Kuzma. Now, Kristaps Porzingis is expected to opt out and re-sign with the Washington Wizards. He could opt in for $36 million. Porzingis could command a multi-year deal for 4 to 5 years, ranging in between $134 million and $174 million within that range. And also, Eric Pincus goes on to say Kyle Kuzma is also expected to opt out and re-sign with the team this summer. And this is stuff that we heard over right before the trade deadline. I want to say after the trade deadline that Tommy Shepard, one of these guys, had come back and that they were in agreement almost that they wanted to come back. So what are your thoughts about this news? And also, what is this telling you that this news is coming out even though we haven't even announced a GM yet? JT3 and Brett Greenberg right now are basically running the team. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, my first thought is it's not surprising. We kind of knew it was going to happen. We all knew that going forward, they were going to try to keep this core, this solid three together. But like you said, I mean, we were talking about before the show, man. And it also tells you that I don't think they know what they're trying to do. Like, I mean, if you were intent on bringing this core back, then you should have just kept Tommy. Because that tells me that you're not going to give a lot of leeway to this new GM, that Ted is still really running the shots. And to me, we need a GM who has a little bit of autonomy to really be successful in DC. I think Ted needs to step back and let the new GM do his thing, but it doesn't appear that's going to happen. Yeah, it's a little shocking because we don't even have a GM. So you got moves being made, you don't even have a GM. And we were talking about this last episode, how, West Unsealed has a say, and that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, it's unorthodox, I guess, to say. That would be the most positive way to say it. Is a bit unorthodox because, again, you don't have a general manager, but you're already committing a lot of money to three guys, man. So that just tells me that, and we're going to look at candidates going forward, but that tells me that he's going to bring in a guy who's familiar with the organization. That's if I'm willing to bet, he's going to bring in a guy like maybe Milt Newton. I think Conley is kind of a stretch because I think he's kind of solidified and cemented in Minnesota for at least 1 or 2 more years. So I don't think he's going to break with Minnesota to come over here. And I don't think that, the Gobert trade was bad, but I don't think it's bad enough to really get him fired. And, there's still the jury's still out how he fits in Minnesota long term. But I do think that the new GM is going to be somebody who's connected to the franchise like Milt Newton because nothing's really changed. I think that Tommy Shepard was the scapegoat. I think that he fired Tommy because he knew the fan base was upset and somebody had to go. And it was between Wes and it was between Tommy Shepard. And if you look at that, between those two, the fact that Wes Unseld is connected to this franchise the way he is, that was an easy choice. So I think that Tommy Shepard was sacrificed because, outside of his firing, man, what has really changed? Like I said, we don't even have a general manager yet. And we have committed an overwhelming percentage of our cap to 3 guys. So I think we all knew. And I think that's the biggest thing about me and you being rebuild guys is that we could have our own opinions, but the franchise they know what they were going to do. They know what they're going to do going forward. So you have to kind of roll with that and really analyze based on what the franchise is going to do. We're not going to rebuild. Ted wants a team that's going to be a playing first-round playoff team, and he stands by that. So, yeah, it is weird because, again, we don't have a general manager, and, we're getting closer to the draft. We don't have that leader. General manager is a leader. He's like that captain that writes the ship. He's one of the So the fact that we don't have one as we speak is questionable in my opinion. But am I surprised? Nah, I'm not surprised though.
Yeah, and I do think Tommy Shepard earned his firing. He didn't win more than 35 games, and he didn't hit home runs on his draft picks. He made good picks, solid picks, but didn't hit home runs. And then his trades were fine; they were good. The Porzingis trade was a good trade. Trading John Wall for Russ Westbrook, getting the contract off the books and getting Russ, and then making the playoffs, and then you flip Russ for Kuz, Harrell, and Dinwiddie, even though Dinwiddie didn't work out. But then his trades of this past season, I feel like those trades got him fired. Ted watching Rui play so well, and then you lost the international revenue, their international popularity with trading Rui, and now Rui's playing well with the Lakers. And trading KCP for Monte Morris, that didn't work out. Will Barton just had to be bought out. That's how bad it was with Will Barton. So I do think Tommy definitely earned his firing, but of course, like we've been saying, like I don't think Ted is really going to give a lot of autonomy to the new GM. They're already making a decision before they even name a GM. Now Ted made this decision after the trade deadline or even before the trade deadline to bring both these guys back, that they really want these guys back. And then you're bringing back Wes. So it's just kind of like nothing's really changing at all. And in the article, Eric Pincus writes as well for Bleacher Report, he says, the Wizards recently parted ways with top basketball executive Tommy Shepard. Still some competing front offices expect the Wizards' next hire to stay the course, expanding upon the team's current core of Bradley Beal, free agent Kyle Kuzma. Once he declines his player option to Kristaps Porzingis. So once again, they're going to stay the course and they're going to try to build around this solid three, which is really tying the hands of the new GM. I mean, you're barely going to have any money to sign any free agents. The veteran minimum deals, mid-level exception, and that's really it. I mean, you're going to have to be really creative, and you got one draft pick that's probably going to be the 8th or 9th pick. So it's hard to expect the 8th or 9th pick to come in here, really turn around the franchise and be a huge impact player day one. But at this position, you're just going to have to hit a home run, which is really going to be hard to do at pick 9 and pick 8. And then Eric Pincus also says many expect Porzingis to end his contract and resign with Washington at a lower number for the 2023-2024 season on a healthy multi-year deal, perhaps in the 4-year, $134 million to $174 million range. So, it looks like they're just going to run it back again. I think the only person that may have some real autonomy is Bob Myers. If Bob Myers comes in here and says, hey, look, I want to go a different direction, I think that's the only guy that could possibly come in here and do that and say that. So, and like we both said, like if they really are in it to win it and they're aggressive and make big moves to win, then sure, I'm for it. Like I wanted them to beat the Hawks in that 2 games where they laid an egg and they lost both of them at home. And they laid an egg against the Raptors. I wanted them to win those games, but once I saw that, I was just done with them. I was. I didn't want them to really run it back with a solid 3 if you're going to pay them that much money. Once again, for both of us, it's not a surprise. Ted wants to run it back. His goal is to make the playoffs or play in and get that one home game so he can make a profit. So I'm not surprised. I mean, I personally, letting Porzingis walk would be hard. You do want to bring him back and get some value for him. And Kuzma, should you have traded him before the trade deadline, that's something that we're going to look at, for years and years to come. And like, hey, you could have got a first-round pick or maybe a first-round pick and a player. You saw what guys were going for. Mikal Bridges, guys were just getting paid for multiple picks at the trade deadline too. So I feel like they really could have got some value for Kuzma, but they decided to hang on. So once again, not surprised, and it is a little concerning that they're and all these could be rumors by Eric Pincus. We don't know if this is 100% true, but we kind of know the way Ted thinks. Like this probably is 99% true.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure what the course of this offseason is going to be. But no, you hit the nail on the head with Tommy, man. Tommy had to go. I'm not trying to advocate he should have stayed. Nah, he definitely had to go. Those 2 trades he made this last season, man, were just terrible, abysmal. So it was time for him to go ahead and just check out, man. But here's the thing, though. If you go ahead and you re-sign, or not re-sign, but bring in like Milt Newton, you're bringing in a Tommy. You're bringing in a guy who has links to the organization, who again has no autonomy. You're doing the same thing. And what do we said all year long? The very definition of insanity. You cannot do the same thing. And that's why I think that Tommy being fired was just somebody had to go, and somebody had to be the sacrificial lamb, and it was him. Because if you have no intention of changing anything, then what are we doing? What are we talking about? And going forward, I'm with you, man. Look, I'm a guy who I stand by it. I was a rebuild guy. I felt like we needed to start from scratch. I stand by that. But again, we're analysts, man. We have to analyze based on the product that we have. and their intent on going forward with the solid three is the core as the core. So that's what we got. So adding to it, we talked about Dylan Brooks, mid-level exception, and maybe that's an option to bring in some talent. Point guard.
Yeah,
How much leverage?
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, it's pretty sure that Anthony Black's coming to DC. Either him or Casey Wallace. I guarantee they're going to go point guard in this draft, which we both said, can be tricky because especially when the core that he's going to lead are veteran guys. Like that's a tough spot to put a rookie in, man. I think what was the last rookie that came in with Miami? Mario Chalmers. I think it was the year that the big three came in Miami. They brought in Chalmers and let him run point. And he was just it took a while for him to really learn to be a leader because it's tough to be a rookie and come to a situation where you have three established veterans. It's just tough, man. So I don't know if they choose to go the veteran route, try to package the pick, but he's got to be creative. This new GM going in, he's got to be creative because they've got to add some talent because this solid three by itself is not going to do it. We definitely need a floor general and another wing. So it's the draft is going to be interesting, whether they go get a point guard or whether they pick up somebody like Cam Whitmore. So yeah, it appears this is going to be our core going forward. And like you touch base, I just want us to win, man. That's it. I just want us to win. If they proven to be a solid core, I will be the first person to say I was wrong. But I'm telling you, I just want to see wins. So that's where I'm at with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Derrick Rose, he was a rookie. He made it to the playoffs. I want to see if John Morant made it to the playoffs as a rookie. I don't think he did, but I know he had a spectacular rookie season. But still, even then, and with John Wall, his rookie year too, some growing pains, some learning up and downs and stuff like that. They just didn't have the roster. So yeah, to expect a rookie point guard to come in and dominate is really hard. It's really hard for that to happen. Or the odds of that are really low. But yeah, we're gonna get to Trajan Langdon. He is a candidate. Of course, Milt Newton is a candidate. It was confirmed by Ava Wallace. Of course, Troy Haliburton broke the news first on here. So congrats to him about Milt Newton. But before we do talk about Trajan Langdon and our thoughts about his trades and draft picks, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Today I hit with Marcus Smart. I had him getting over 20.5 points, rebounds, and assists. I had Joel Embiid getting over 20.5 points. He ended up with 30 or 33. So those were two good picks for me. I finally hit on a 2-pick parlay. So PrizePicks is super easy. This is how it works. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they will go score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. And we want to thank you guys for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every day. Every day is tomorrow on the show. We're going to talk about the Wizards firing of Alex McLean and also their basketball analyst. And then we probably will break down some background of Milt Newton as well. And we will talk about some more possible GM candidates as well. But let's get into Trajan Langdon. So yes, Trajan Langdon. So we're going to talk about his background. We're just going to break down his draft picks because he was hired in 2019. Was an assistant with the Spurs as well. Went to Duke University, played basketball. He was drafted in the first round, 11th pick of the draft. Played baseball as well. So this guy was super athletic. As well, he was a scout for the San Antonio Spurs from 2012 to 2015. In 2016, he was named the assistant general manager of the Brooklyn Nets. And then on May 19, 2019, Langdon was named the general manager of the New Orleans Pelicans. So let's just break down his draft picks first, because that's a big reason why a lot of people thought Tommy Shepard was fired, because he didn't hit home runs. So in 2019, Trajan Langdon, his first pick, of course, was Zion Williamson, the first pick of the draft, another Duke alum or Duke basketball player. In the second round, he drafted Alan Smiljic and Jordan Bone. What are your thoughts on that 2019 draft?
I mean, it's like pick and wall, man. Where else do you go with it?
Right. I mean, and then go ahead.
No, that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
kind of a no-brainer, man.
Right. And like I said, this was from Ava Wallace of Washington Times, I want to say, or the Washington Post. Let me pull it up real quick. Of the Washington Post. Yes, she said Wizards owner Ted Leonsis and a small group of decision makers have spoken to Pelicans general manager Trajan Langdon and Bucks assistant GM Milt Newton, according to Wallace, and of course Troy Haliburton, who adds that the team is still believed to be in the information gathering stage of its search. She also says Wizards VP of Player Programs John Thompson III and Assistant GM Brett Greenberg are running the team's basketball operations department. While the search for a new head of basketball operations continues. All right, so let's move on to 2020. He drafted Kira Lewis out of Alabama, Elijah Hughes out of Syracuse, Nick Richards with pick 42. Nick Richards is now on the Charlotte Hornets, and Sam Merrill with pick 60. Sam Merrill's on the Milwaukee Bucks, and Elijah Hughes is on the Utah Jazz. What are your thoughts about his 2020 draft, and what grade would you give that?
That would get a D- because Kyra Lewis he contributed 4 points, I guess. But yeah, Nick Richards, he's a wizard killer. We have Nick Richards plays against us. But outside of that, man, I don't even know where Sam Merrill is. Elijah Hughes, yeah, I'd give it a D- just because Kyra had 4 points.
Right, yeah. Kyra Lewis out of Alabama. Right now, he's averaging 4 points, 1 board. And then you look at the people drafted behind him. Now, Kyra Lewis was drafted right behind Tyrese Haliburton. That was the same draft as Denny, Obi Toppin, and Jalen Smith. Now, right behind Kyra Lewis at pick 15 was Cole Anthony, who's playing really well with the Magic. Aaron Nesmith is putting up good minutes with the Pacers. Isaiah Stewart was drafted by the Blazers and then traded to the Pistons. So that's another player they could have gotten. Sadiq Bey at 19. Drafted by the Pistons. Precious Achua, who's okay. Tyrese Maxey at pick 21. Manuel quickly at pick 25. So yeah, that was I give that one an F. I'm going to be the Russian judge, and I think it's pretty easy to say. I give that pick an F out of Alabama. So 2021, pick 10 was Zaire Williams. They ended up trading that to Memphis. The second round they picked it. They drafted Herb Jones with pick 35. Jared Butler, the point guard out of Baylor, who was traded to Utah. And then pick 43 was Greg Brown, who was traded to the Portland Trailblazers. What grade do you give his 2021 draft?
C-, because I think that he got a little value with his second round picks. Herb Jones is solid. Jared Butler kind of jury's still out. And Greg Brown, he's a project, but I think he's high upside in Portland, man. But yeah, Zaire Williams, that's a questionable pick, man. So I'm gonna roll with a C-.
Right. And Zaire Williams right now, he's on the is he still on the Pelicans or is he on the Memphis Grizzlies? I'm pretty sure he's on the
I think he's in Memphis.
Yeah, he's on the Memphis Grizzlies. So they ended up trading him. So I give that one, I give it a C, but Herb Jones kind of brings it up to a B because Herb Jones has really been a hit. He's a great defender, and how good he played in the playoffs last year. So Herb Jones was a really good pick. So that does boost it up. I'm trying to look at the trade where Zaire Williams was traded. So yeah, he was traded. He was traded to the Grizzlies for Valanciunas, and he was included in that Giannis Valanciunas trade. In that draft. So that's where he was traded to. So last one here, the most recent one, we're going to go to the 2022 draft. And this one is kind of to be determined. Dyson Daniels, pick 8, pick 41, EJ Liddell. And then second round was Carlo Matkovic. And right now, Dyson Daniels is averaging 3 points a game, 3 boards, 2 assists. Still, the jury's still out on him.
Yeah.
A lot of Wizards fans wanted Dyson Daniels, and I was kind of iffy on Dyson because he couldn't shoot. Yeah. Coming out of the G League, he just looked like DeLon Wright to me, but he's athletic. What are your thoughts on that draft so far?
I don't know, man. DeLon was hitting threes this year, so
that is true. But it took DeLon, and DeLon is a good defender, so it's that's not a bad pick. If Dyson Daniels ends up becoming a good defender and a connector, and I don't want to say, I'm not gonna say poor man's Lonzo Ball. I'm gonna say the common man's Lonzo Ball. I think that's Dyson's ceiling.
I'm not. Dyson's all right. I'm with you. I wasn't really big on him because of his shot. I think he's a project that can develop into a really good player. But again, do you really use your 8th pick on a project? So I think that's what kind of knocks the draft, man. If I'm a grade it, that's hard, man, to be determined. I got C-. I'm rolling because I think Dyson Daniels has the intangibles. He has to work on the shot. But, I mean, look at the other two. I mean, EJ Liddell, Carlo Makovic. So, yeah, I'm going to have to roll with C-, man.
Right. Okay. I'm kind of with you on that. The jury's still on Dyson. I mean, he could have got Jeremy Sohan at pick 9, but they kind of have Herb Jones. He got Brandon Ingram already in Zion. So they weren't going to get another small forward. We drafted Johnny Davis at pick 10. They could have got Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara, but nobody had Jalen Williams really going that high at pick 8. Jalen Duren, they already had Giannis Valanciunas. AJ Griffin out of Duke, I like him from the Hawks. So they had they were going to get another small forward. So I give that pick about it. It's to be determined. It's really up in the air. So let's get to trades. Of course, when he first came in, he made a pretty big trade, of course, of trading Anthony Davis. So they traded Anthony Davis, the Lakers trade, where LeBron wanted Anthony Davis, and of course he ended up getting him. And Anthony Davis forced his way out, so they had no choice. They traded him. They traded Lonzo. They traded him for Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, DeAndre Hunter, who ended up going to the Hawks, Brandon Ingram, cash, and a 2022 first round pick, which was later used on Dyson Daniels. So, what's your thoughts on that trade?
Oh man, that's an A+. I mean, he was able to get a lot from the Lakers, man. I mean, Lonzo Ball, really good point guard, which unfortunately his career is kind of up in the air right now. But Josh Hart, who's currently with the Knicks, I mean, a guy who's a 3-and-D, can defend, can shoot from behind the arc. Same thing with DeAndre Hunter. I mean, he can shoot, he can defend. Brandon Ingram, man, which I agree with people that call him Kevin Durant 2.0. You know, the small frame, but he can score whenever he wants. That's the player I like in the deal, man. I'm a big Brandon Ingram fan, man, coming out of Duke. And obviously the pick, which we know is Dyson Daniels, but you know, to be able to get all that and a pick, I think it was an A+ trade, man.
Right. They also signed Jackson Hayes, who hasn't really worked out. He's been kind of inconsistent up and down. Yeah. Alexander Walker, he hasn't really worked out either. He's been in and out of the G League. Now they did sign Najee Marshall, who's been a good pickup. He's been a hidden gem. Jose Alvarado has been a hidden gem for them. He's kind of been like our Jordan Goodwin. Well, that's what Jordan Goodwin says he wants to play like. So he's found some hidden gems here and there. Some really good second-round picks, some really good two-way players. So I give him credit for that. Another trade that he made the Brandon Ingram, the CJ McCollum trade. I'm going to pull that one up too. I got to find that one. But I personally – I like that trade. The Valanciunas trade, I did like that trade too. I thought that was a productive trade. I think Valanciunas has been a good player for them. And also they made the playoffs. They didn't make the playoffs this year. They made the play-in, but that's Tommy Shepard's goal. So I could see Tommy Shepard being intrigued by that. They made the playoffs last year when nobody thought they were going to make the playoffs. I think they made a good hire in hiring Willie Green. I think he's been a good head coach for them. They've been a better defensive team. They have somewhat of an identity with Brandon Ingram. And their coach and their staff has been able to weather the storm. Trey Murphy has been a good draft pick for the Pelicans. A lot of people wanted Trey Murphy instead of Corey Kispert. Like I said, I like Corey Kispert a lot, so I'm not mad at us not taking Trey Murphy. But they made a swing on that. They took Trey Murphy. I thought that was a great pick by them. He's played really well, even though he's had a couple stints in the G League. But, I mean, he meets the criteria of what Ted is looking for in making the playoffs. Like I said, they made the playoffs with Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum last year. And then they made the play-in, even though Zion missed a lot of games and Brandon Ingram missed a good amount of games this year. And I like the trade that they made for CJ McCollum right here. I'm trying to find out the details for the trade.
Yeah, I believe it was they grabbed CJ McCollum and Larry Nance Jr. for Josh Hart and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So that's not a bad move, man. Because Larry Nance Jr. again is a 4 who can defend and shoot. And CJ McCollum, I'm gonna tell you what, this is a nice looking squad. Because if Zion is healthy, come on, your 2 guard is CJ McCollum. You got Brandon Ingram. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, like you said, Trey Murphy. I mean, this is a solid team. So, I mean, and then you brought up the Valanciunas trade. You know, Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe for Valanciunas. So that was a good move because while Steven Adams, he's a big who's very strong. You know, Valanciunas, he's another Wizards killer, but he's the modern day big. You shoot from behind the arc, you can defend. So. I mean, like you said, he mirrors Tommy Shepard a little bit because, I mean, his draft game's on point. Or not, trade game, that is. His drafting needs some work. And if you look at the picks outside of Zion, most of the picks are around 8 to 12. So it's usually where we draft anyway. So it kind of gives you a little indication, you know, how his draft game is. But I would welcome it. I like what I see. I remember watching him play in Duke. You know, he was a scrappy guard, man. So, But the only thing that really, the only negative I see is Zion. Not really taking control of the Zion situation, because I think the Zion situation to a certain degree mirrors the Bradley Beal situation. I mean, both of them are kind of injury prone, not as much as Zion. I mean, Bradley Beal's been better with his injuries outside of the last couple of years, but dealing with that situation, I want to, if he comes into Washington, how's he going to deal, with Bradley Beal? Because we touched base before, this GM coming in, whether it's Trajan Langdon or whoever, they're not going to have a lot of rope, from Ted Leon says. So, is he going to have that personality where he's going to check Bradley Beal, or he's going to kind of let Bradley Beal run amok? That's another perspective we haven't really looked at as far as this GM search. Because if you look at the relationship with Tommy Shepard, and that's why I brought up him and Zion, because I kind of want a guy to come in here who's going to check people, who's going to let him be the GM and the player be the player. And I think that's another thing that we kind of need in DC, is that we need a guy who's going to come in and who's going to define roles real quick and say, look, your job's to play. My job's to find personnel to help you play. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm at with it, man. And I think that Trajan Langdon might be that guy. But, like you said, getting back into the transactions, man, his trade game's on point. The flip Anthony Davis for that is, he got a lot from Anthony Davis. So, yeah, I love his trade game.
Mm. Yeah, so his drafting is kind of mid, kind of like Tommy's was. He hit, of course, on Zion. You had to draft Zion, and the injuries that he's been able to weather the storm with Zion being out, being able to pick up guys like Najee Marshall and Herb Jones, and Brandon Ingram's been great so far. The trades have been solid. Yeah, like you said, they've been good. CJ McCollum, Larry Nance, and Tony Snell for Josh Hart. Or giving up Josh Hart, Tomas Satoransky, Nikhil Alexander-Walker, a second-round pick. I mean, a 2022 first-round pick was protected, and 2 future second-round picks for CJ McCollum, Larry Nance, and Tony Snell. So they made the postseason 2 years in a row, which would, once again, check the box for Ted Leonsis. And then giving up Eric Bledsoe, who didn't want to be there, and Steven Adams for Jonas Valanciunas. And Memphis, they got pick number 17 and pick 51. The Pelicans ended up getting pick number 17 and pick 51 as well. So, but they gave up pick 10, which ended up being Zaire Williams. So I think they're all fair trades. I think they're all good trades that made the Pelicans better and made them postseason worthy. My question is the drafting. And he kind of has been in that middle spot, like the Wizards, getting pick 9, pick 10, pick 8, or pick 17 with Trey Murphy. So is he an upgrade? I think he is, but he's not the upgrade that I think like Bob Myers would or Masai Ujiri would. And he has been able to hit on some, later round picks and 2-way guys, like I said, Jose Alvarado. So, like you said, with Bradley Beal, that element it's just Ted. What does Ted want to do with Brad, and what does Brad want to do with the no trade clause? So those are the question marks coming in. But it looks like that first year, he's going to have to stay the course, as Eric Pincus said in the article. He's going to have to do what Ted wants to do with that solid 3. So he's going to have to move forward with that group. If it doesn't work, then I think Ted will give him the autonomy to. I think he just wants to give Wes. I think Ted feels like he owes Wes because of his dad to give him that one last year, and then same thing with Brad, Zingis, and Kuz. He wants to run it back and see if it doesn't work. Then I feel like he may give the new GM autonomy to finally move on.
Yeah, but that's a tough call, man. Because if you pay Kuz and KP long term, you can't easily just turn around and say, "Man, look, I want to break it down." I mean, once you give that money to them, and once you get those contracts, you've pretty much said that the next 3 to 5 years, that's your core. And I mean, like you said, we are in a position to where if that's what they're going to do, that's what we roll with. But he's got to be tricky. Whoever comes into this situation, they got to be tricky because you got to find a point guard. You've got to find a point guard, man. And, maybe another wing, but point guard is something we desperately need, man. Like people in hell need ice water. I'm trying to tell you, we need a point guard. So, I mean, looking at Trajan Langdon, he checks all the boxes. I think he is an upgrade. I'm with you, E. He definitely checks the boxes. But I also agree that he's got to up his game a little bit with drafting. Now, Trey Murphy, there are a couple picks and a couple pickups. Like you said, Alvarado, man, he's scrappy, man. He frustrated a lot of people this season, man, just with his, being so scrappy. So, yeah, I think that Trajan Langdon would be an upgrade. But again, the unfortunate thing about any GM that comes into the situation is that they're going to have very little leeway to, what they can do, because you have to roll with this solid 3 going forward. And I think that, it's not confirmed, but I think we all know that they're going to roll with this core. If I wasn't willing to bet on it, they're going to roll with this core. And so, it is what it is. It's going to be a tricky offseason, man, to see what they do to try to reinforce Bradley Beal and the crew. But, I think, but in closing, man, Trajan Langdon, I think, is definitely a candidate that I would like to see in DC. So,
Yeah. And one thing I'll say, I just looked up defensive rating. The Pelicans were 6th in defensive rating this past season. I'm going to look at what they were in 2022 as well. So they have some type of identity, which the Wizards don't have. In 2022, they were ranked 20th, but this year they were ranked 6th. So, but we'll end on that. We'll wrap it up. We're going to talk about Milt Newton tomorrow, and we'll talk about Milt Newton and his candidacy and other Wizards news. But we just want to thank you guys for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every day. Make sure you guys subscribe as well and hit the notification bell. Hail to the Wizards.